What's been very interesting for me, having visited Saudi a few times now, is an incredible groundswell of creativity and excitement. There is a creativity here that's not been tapped, and I think the opportunity now to unleash it through art, music and culture is going to be fascinating.
I believe that the opportunities that are being offered here in ITRA are really great for the youth in Saudi Arabia, especially that they're bringing global knowledge inside the Eastern Province.
Really opening up ideas around creativity and how that can actually influence the future generation.
Its architecture, just the shape of the building, communicates to the world something really interesting is happening here.
We're all embarking on a transformational sort of a journey. The world's sort of changing, and it's changing very, very quickly.
There's a real energy inside this building. It's packed full of amazing speakers giving really interesting talks, from tech to how to design films. This wonderful program of lots of different experts from around the world.
Being able to connect with other people and realize how similar we are, honestly, and how much we can benefit from collaborating together. And I think that's really going to spark a new level of creativity.
Wizard of Oz is the musical theater that tells the iconic story of the MGM movie about Dorothy, who dreams of rainbows and ends up leaving Kansas in a tornado and ends up in the magical world of Oz. In the merry old land of Oz. This show has been to almost 200 theaters throughout the world, and I have to say, there's not any that are as close as world-class as ITHRA. State-of-the-art facility, professional staff, a beautiful, beautiful theater, incredible designs. It's a very, very special venue to be a part in this beautiful part of the world. The magic of storytelling with music and dance, and to bring that to a part of the world where civilization really began.
The Wizard of Oz is the first time that we've used the theatre's full capabilities of its automated line system and orchestra pit. We've had many shows here, but since opening, this is the first time the orchestra pit has been used to its full potential.
The audiences have been so welcoming and so giving. Honestly, I remember on opening night, like we were, as a cast, all pretty emotional. It was an unforgettable experience.
Do my bidding, fly. Fly! Fly!
So Bethany, our stage manager, and she's standing behind this screen where she is watching the show. And so every light cue that happens, every time the bubble comes in with Glinda, or the witch flies, or a different set piece moves in and out, she calls that. So when she gives the go-ahead, all of the crew members move the set pieces in and out, fly Glinda in, truly make the magic happen. Whatever it is, always do what you love, because, you know, through our passions, we are able to create such beauty, and we're able to give that to the world, and that is a gift that can truly be unlike any other.
It was pretty magical when first arriving here to see ITHRA as you're driving around the road, as you lead into the entrance. You almost feel like you're on a magical road to Oz.
I think it's amazing that the program represents a promise of continuous enrichment for the people of Saudi Arabia, and the fact that they are achieving that promise through the arts, through science, and through culture, it's truly spectacular. Probably one of the best words to describe ITHRA is magical.
We bring a team of coaches from Barcelona. They are specialized in handling blind players. Some of those coaches participate in the Spanish national team as goalkeepers or as coaches.
Well, we try to make it a very playful environment and also a learning environment. Our balls, they have bells inside them so that they know where they're rolling, where they're moving around. And also to communicate between each other, especially if you're attacking. The most important and the number one rule, I'd say, in blind football is to use the word void when you're attacking, and to let everyone know where you are at that moment. Because if not, there will be collisions, there will be accidents, which we don't want to happen. Apart from that, we also, players would play around putting their arm up to avoid collisions and to avoid getting hit in the face.
Yes. Okay.
Once they know the sound from left and right and center, by clapping or by just banging on the side post, the player is ready to take a kick.
أعتقد كتجربة مميزة جدا. أول شيء تجربة بالنسبة لنا احنا كمدربين ورياضيين، بالعكس تكون الحالة الذهنية حاضرة باستمرار، اعتمادك كثير على حاسة السمع، يعني تحفظ مساراتك خطواتك، وهذا مفيد بالنسبة لنا احنا.
طبعا تجربة جدا جميلة صراحة، بالنسبة انه تجرب شيء جديد عليك انت شخصيا كإنسان مبصر طبيعي، تلاقي فيها صعوبة جدا كبيرة. أصعب شيء التوازن، شيء طبيعي انه يكون في المقام الأول التوازن يعني. أما الأشياء الثانية مع الوقت تتعود عليها لو بشكل بسيط يعني.
I think this is one of the most important events that take place. It makes people more aware, and I think that is the most important thing that the center, IFRA, could provide.
Rising from the sand of Saudi Arabia, a structure designed to make history.
The first time I saw this project, I was just overwhelmed. You have organic, free-form shapes.
Nothing like it has ever been attempted.
This is the most experimental, deep dive into technologies that we've ever done.
The stakes are enormous.
The question is not what is difficult, the question is what is not difficult.
The pressure is unrelenting.
You know what's the plan. Somebody can do it faster than me.
A lot of confusion, a lot of tension.
There was some kind of communication problem or something.
Engineers, you bring them something simple, they will complain. You bring them something complex, they will complain.
But if builders succeed, they'll help propel this nation towards a bright future.
These young children, they are the future leaders, innovators. They are the future Saudi.
And unveil a new wonder of the world.
People will wonder, how is it built? How is it done?
Wouldn't it be kind of fun to see if you could add just the right technology to the human mind and the body and fly in that way? Use the mind from the balance point of view and the body from the just leaning on the thrust point of view. See it live and you feel that 1,000 horsepower hitting you in the chest, and then see a human being rise up and move around in such a fluid, sort of smooth way. It tends to have quite a profound effect on people.
You are in a place where you cannot dream as a kid and open your mind, whether it is painting, playing, doing artwork, or whatever it is, then where do you go if you cannot open your mind at a young age, sorry. And that's what I saw today. I was looking around, I saw a lot of kids having fun with their family, which is very important, you know, keeping it as a family thing. And also the fact that, you know, this place will attract people. Not only the locals, but look, I'm here. Some people will come here to see it because it's magnificent, and I encourage people to come and see it, and that's very important.
I think the future of mankind, and frankly the past of mankind as well, has all been about people who are not afraid to go and imagine and create and learn and innovate. All of the problems in the world that we've got, I think, will be addressed most efficiently by people being innovative, collaborating with different cultures and different ideas, not being afraid to experiment, to learn from that experimentation, to play, you know, very relevant to this event this year.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. مساء الخير جميعاً. مساء الخميس الجميل الونيس واللي يزداد أنس كمان بوجود جميع الحاضرين وأيضاً المتحدثين المتميزين اليوم. بداية أحب أعرف بنفسي. اسمي سمر سمير، مهندسة كهرباء وحاسب، أعمل حالياً كمطورة أعمال في شركة تقنية. واليوم جداً أعتبر نفسي محظوظة بوجودي بين هذا الحشد المتميز في منصة تنوين. منصة تنوين التابعة لموسم تنوين اللي قدر إنه يضيف نفسه في زخم الأحداث والفعاليات اللي بتصير هذا العام. أثبت تميزه جداً. يمكن أكثر شيء أبدأ فيه هو تنوين كلغة كاصطلاحاً. تنوين في اللغة العربية هي هذا الأثر المضاف للكلمة المجردة اللي يحدث أثر ووقع خاص وصدى أيضاً للسامع للمتلقي. هذا الاختلاف في الوقع والأثر على السامع والمتلقي أيضاً نجده في موسم تنوين، في الرحلة الاستكشافية الإبداعية المختلفة في مختلف المجالات: ثقافة، إبداع، ثقافة، فن، علوم، ريادة أعمال، جميعها متبناة بإطار مختلف ومميز. الثيم حق هذا العام ما في أحد مستقصى أو مستثنى منه، 20 30 40 أكثر أو أقل، ما في أحد مستثنى منه، لأننا جميعاً دائماً مستعدون للعب. ثيم هذا العام مستعدون للعب. يمكن أول ما نسمع كلمة لعب حتكون أحد النوعين من هذه الأنواع من الأشخاص. يا أما حتكون الشخص اللي حيقول أنا الشخص اللي أول ما أسمع كلمة لعب أتذكر أستحضر ذاكرتي والطفل اللي أنا كنته من سنة سنتين 20 30 سنة. أو يمكن كمان ترتبط بالطفل اللي داخلك اللي جواك اللي ما زال على قيد الفضول والفطرة والحب للاكتشاف. وأنا كمان لما أفكر في اللعب، ويمكن توافقوني أو لا with a raise of hand، اللعب ممكن ما نقتصره فقط إنه يكون رحلة أو حالة من المرح فقط، لأنه إذا راجعنا بعض الألعاب حنلاقي نفسنا كمان نستفز بطريقة إنه نفكر بطريقة مختلفة، حنلاقي كمان إنه حواسنا تستجيب بطريقة كمان مختلفة. يدنا في البناء، أو سواء كان في التشكيل أو حتى الاكتشاف. جميع الحواس تتكامل في الرحلة الاكتشافية في اللعب بكل حماس وبدون أي اعتراض، لأنه دائما بعد أي لعبة حنلاقي نفسنا جعانين، لأنه استنزفنا كل الطاقة اللي ممكن حواسنا عندها من باتري تسيبها أو تحفظها. هذا العلم أو هذا العالم من الألعاب أثار فضول كثير من الأشخاص، فما وجدوا إنه شيء يطرح فقط في حوار جانبي نتحدث أهمية اللعب وإلى أي مدى يضيف لنا. لا، في ناس منهجوه وتكلموا فيه في مختلف النقاط. على سبيل المثال اليوم نحن بنتكلم عن مساحة اللعب. مساحة اللعب تخليني أفكر في المساحة المتواجدة أنا فيها اليوم، واللي كنت قبل ساعتين متواجدة فيها في السيارة، واللي قبل ساعة كنت متواجدة فيها في المساحة الخارجية. متحدثتنا اليوم أو متحدثين اليوم حيتكلموا عن مساحة اللعب وبطريقتهم الخاصة، كيف نحن ممكن نخلق ونستحدث مساحات لعب أينما كنا وأينما حللنا. المتحدثة الأولى والوحيدة اللي حتكون معانا باللغة العربية، وأحب أنوه إذا كان أي أحد حاب يستمتع في اللقاء اليوم باللغتين العربية والإنجليزية، حيكون في ترانزليشن هيدسيت موجودة عند الاستقبال، وكمان الفولنتير ممكن يساعدوكم إنكم تحصلوا عليها مشكورين. المتحدثة الأولى لنا اليوم واللي حنستفتح فيها هذا اللقاء المميز حتتكلم اليوم عن كيف نحن ممكن نقدر نتيح فرصة اللعب في مختلف البرزنتيشن أو المساحات. اختصاصها واليوم اللي حتتكلم لنا فيه عنه عن إنشاء مدن حضارية مناسبة للطفل. تعمل متحدثتنا اليوم كمهندسة مواقع في شركة أروب and مصممة مناظر طبيعية. أتمنى نشعل الطاقة في أول لقاء أو أول حديث لهذا اللقاء المتميز في تنوين لمتحدثتنا الأولى لولو AlMana. شكراً.
أهلين، مساء الخير. يسعدني جداً أني أكون معاكم اليوم. ألف شكر لفريق تنوين على استضافتي. طبعاً أنا دائماً مبسوطة أني إذا جاتني فرصة أعرض جزء من عملي في أي مكان، بس اليوم مرة مبسوطة أنه أول مرة أعرض جزء من شغلي في الخبر في مدينتي وعند أهلي في الشرقية. موضوعي راح يكون عن تصميم وتخطيط مدن صديقة للطفل، وغالباً راح يكون كلامي بالعربي مثل ما ذكرت سمر، بس في بعض النقاط راح أضطر أشرحها بالإنجليزي، فاسمحوا لي، وإن شاء الله ما ألخبط المترجمين كثير. للتعريف بنفسي، أنا لولو المانع، مهندسة بيئة عمرانية في شركة أروب في لندن. في شركتنا نسوي صراحة كل شيء له علاقة بالعمران والعمارة والمدن. إحنا مجموعة مهندسين، مخططين، معماريين، مصممين، أي شيء له علاقة في البنيان يهمنا. بس اللي يميز شغلنا إن نهتم، هو هدفنا إن نبني عالم أفضل، فنهتم إنه المشاريع اللي ناخذها كلها تكون متمركزة على مبادئ مثالية اجتماعية وبيئية. فمو بس أي مشروع نبغى نشتغل عليه، لا، نبي نعمل أو نبني أشياء تفيد المجتمع وتفيد العالم ككل. صراحة هو ما في مصطلح بالعربي يشرح مهنتي، أو احترت يعني وما لقيت مصطلح يشرح مهنتي. سمر ذكرت مصممة مناظر طبيعية، في ناس تقول أشياء مهندسة لاندسكيب أو شيء. هي بالإنجليزي لاندسكيب architecture. ما أدري كم أحد مر عليه هذا التخصص من قبل. أوكي، حلو. بعض عملي يتضمن تصميم حدائق، أماكن عامة، الواجهات البحرية، الشوارع، حتى تخطيط أحياء، إلى خطط استراتيجية المدن. أي شيء من النطاق اللي هو بين المباني هذا جزء من شغلي. من خلال هذا العرض راح أتكلم عن مشروع بحث اشتغلنا فيه في شركة أرب، وما زلنا يعني قاعدين نشتغل عليه، عن تصميم مدن للأطفال. فعشان نبدأ أول شيء حابة يعني نرجع لماضي الخبر ونشوف مثلا كيف كانت المدينة في الستينات الميلادية. هذه صورة شارع الملك خالد، وهو من أحب الأماكن لي في الخبر، وطبعا له تاريخ رائع أتوقع كلكم تعرفونه. طب أنا ما عندي غير الصور يعني أتخيل فيها كيف كان، بس كم شخص هنا يمكن عاصر هذا الوقت أو يعترف إنه عاصر؟ أوكي، واحدة بس اللي اعترفت، حلو. يعني من القصص ومن الصور نقدر نتخيل كيف كانت حياة الطفل في هذه البيئة. هل كان يمشي إلى المدرسة بنفسه؟ هل كان يلعب برا البيت؟ إذا راح المدرسة وهو راجع هل يمر على البقالة أو المخبز مثلا، أو يمر على أولاد الجيران يشوفهم؟ مثل هذه الأشياء اللي راح نتطرق لها في هذا العرض. ولو قارناها هذاك الشارع بصورة شارع موجود اليوم، وهذا ما يبعد يعني أكثر من 200 متر من الصورة الأولى، شارع الظهران، يعني هل ممكن يعني من المعقول أن أحد بيسمح لابنه أو بنته أنه يطلعوا في بيئة زي كذا؟ طبعاً لا. فالتغير هذا اللي حصل عندنا في السعودية مثلاً في مثال الشارعين هذولي موجود في أماكن ثانية في العالم، مثلا في ضواحي بعض مدن أمريكا، بعض مدن بريطانيا إلى آخره. هذه خريطة مرة حلوة ترسم لنا عبر 4 أجيال كيف تغير نطاق المشي عند كل شخص. فالجد الأكبر جورج لما كان عمره 8 سنين في سنة 1919 كان يمشي من بيته 10 كيلو لحاله إلى النهر عشان يصيد السمك. ابنه جاك لما كان عمره 8 في سنة 1950 ميلادي كان يمشي تقريبا 1.5 كيلو إلى الغابة أو إلى أماكن قريبة يعني من البيت، وكان هذا يعني تقريبا حده. بنت جاك فيكي اللي فوق لما صار عمرها 8 في سنة 1979 قلل نطاق المشي اللي عندها، صارت تمشي يدوب 0.5 كيلو إلى أقرب مسبح عام في الحي عشان تأخذ دروس سباحة. وولدها الصغير أدوارد اليوم يدوب يسمحون له بس يروح لآخر شارع البيت لحاله. فليش قاعدة تقل هذه النطاقات؟ ليش الطفل ما هو يعني قادر يمشي أكثر أو يروح محلات بنفسه أكثر؟ صحيح أن المجتمع قاعد يتغير، بس المدن بعد تغيرت، تصميم المدن تغير. فهل طريقة التصميم والتخطيط لها علاقة بالموضوع؟ هذا هو اللي نبغى نشوفه. عالمنا اليوم عالم مدني، أكثر مرة في الحياة أنه نسبة السكان عايشين في مدن. اليوم أكثر من 50% من سكان العالم عايشين في مدن، وعندنا حسب الإحصائيات 1 بليون طفل يعيش في المدن. فعشان كذا مرة مهم ننتبه لهذه النقطة، هل المدن مهيئة للأطفال؟ في كثير عوامل ممكن تشكل حياة الطفل، تشكل شخصيته، سلوكه، تطويره الشخصي. واحد منهم هو عامل البيئة اللي هو يعيش فيها، ولها تأثير عالي جدا. مثلا الحركات البسيطة زي المشي إلى المدرسة أو السيكل أو اللعب الحر، هذه كلها تكون مجتمعات نشيطة. مثلا في هذه الصورة في أولاد راجعين من المدرسة وهم على شارع، بس ما في أي صورة أي سيارة في الشارع. ما أدري هو الشارع مسكر للمشاة أو ما في يعني عليه زحمة أو شيء، بس كل هذه الأشياء تعود أو تنبع من تصميم المدينة. طيب خلينا نشوف إيش هي التحديات اللي نواجهها في المدن. الأول هو هيمنة السيارة على بعض المدن، وهذا أكبر تحدي وعائق عندنا في السعودية، ويمنع الأهل أنهم يعطون أبنائهم حرية الحركة في الحي. طبعا السيارة خطرة وتضاعف من تلوث الهواء وكمية الحوادث. بعدين تمدد المدينة وتوسعتها، لأنها تزيد الاعتماد على السيارة، فتضعف من يعني ما تساعد في إنه المدينة تكون مثالية للطفل. والتحدي الثالث اللي هو المخاوف الاجتماعية، البيوت معزولة وما لها شبابيك على الشارع ولا على الحي، الجدران عالية، الأسوار عالية، في مخاوف كثير من الشارع إنه هو يعني مكان غريب خطر، فيه حوادث، جرائم، ناس غريبة. ما ننظر له إنه الشارع يعني كأنه امتداد من البيت أو مكان يعني مألوف آمن نعرف إيش اللي فيه. وبعدين في عدم تساوي الفرص في المدينة، مثلا تلاقي بعض الأحياء فيها حدائق وبعض الأحياء لا، ووجود أماكن كثيرة تمنع الأطفال والمراهقين أو ما ترحب فيهم. ففي عملنا هذا كونا رؤية للمدينة المناسبة للطفل أو الصديقة للطفل، ومن خلال هذه الرؤية عندنا هدفين أو مفهومين، يعني عشان نقدر نستوعب إيش هي المدينة الصديقة للطفل وكيف نقدر نطبقها. المفهوم الأول هو الحريات اليومية، everyday freedoms. هذا يعني مؤشر يعني كيف إذا كان الطفل عنده الحرية إنه يلعب لعب حر في المكان اللي هو فيه. اللعب الحر غير عن إنه يروح مثلا حديقة فيها يعني مكان ألعاب مسور أو كذا، لا، اللعب الحر اللعب اللي يستعمل فيه الطفل خياله، هو يحدد إيش يبغى يلعب، يستعمل اللي عنده اللي موجود. وهي هذه يعني غريزة طبيعية عند الطفل، أتوقع كل الأهالي يعرفون هذا الشيء. الطفل يبغى يبتكر نوع اللعب اللي يبغاه بطريقة فيها مرح، عفوية، شيء سهل وخفيف، مو لازم إنه يكون هو في مكان ألعاب عشان يعني يفهم إيش لازم يسوي. فهذا اللعب أو الحرية اللعب واحدة من المفاهيم اللي احنا قاعدين نركز عليها. الهدف الثاني هو اللي نسميه البنية التحتية للأطفال، children's infrastructure، وهذه شبكة أماكن، حدائق، شوارع ومبادرات في المدينة تكون شبكة متواصلة سهل الحركة فيها بأمان وسهولة، تكون هذه البنية التحتية. وهذه نعتقد إحنا أن أهميتها مثل أهمية البنية التحتية للطاقة، للكهرباء، للماء، للنفايات، لهالأشياء اللي موجودة كشيء أساسي عندنا في المدن. ونعتقد أن وجودها يعني يجذب عوائل صحية وعوائل يعني أسرية، يعني مركزة على أنه حياة الأسرة يكون صحي عندها. وهذه المساحات اللي جزء من هذه البنية التحتية تشكل 25% من المدينة بشكل عام. وفي كذا اختبار نسويه أحياناً اسمه The Popsicle Test. السؤال هو: هل من الممكن للطفل أنه يطلع من البيت ويروح للبقالة يشتري آيس كريم ويرجع البيت قبل ما يذوب الآيس كريم؟ إذا كان الجواب لا، يعني إنه البقالة بعيدة أو إنه صعب عليه أو إنه قاعد يسويه بالصيف بس نفكر فيه بالشتاء أحسن. وفي بعدين مبادرة أمريكية اسمها 880 Cities سوت اختبار ثاني، يعني تست، إنه لو كان في طفل عمره 8 سنين أو جد عمره 80 سنة، هل بتسمح لهم يمشون من البيت إلى أقرب حديقة لوحدهم؟ وإذا كان جوابك لا، تعرف إنه أنت ساكن في حي فيه خلل في التصميم، لأنه المفروض إنه من البيت إلى الحديقة يكون في طريق آمن للطفل وجده يروحون. فهذول الهدفين مع بعض يحققوا مفهوم المدينة الصديقة للطفل، إنه في أماكن تروح لها بسهولة وأمان، وفي أشياء تسويها بحرية. طبعا فوائد المدينة الصحية للطفل الصديقة للطفل كثيرة، فيها صحة المجتمع، استدامة البيئة، زيادة الأمن، تقوية الاقتصاد المحلي، يعني إذا ركزنا على هذه الشبكات والأماكن اللي يروحون لها وغيرها. بعض الاقتراحات اللي ممكن نطبقها في كثير على الشاشة، بس راح أختار يمكن 2 أو 3. مثلا إعطاء المشاة الأولوية في المدينة. الإحصائيات تقول إنه 21% من الحوادث هي المميتة هي حوادث الأطفال تحت عمر 18، وحوادث السيارة هي أكبر سبب وفيات للأطفال في العالم. فعادة رد فعل البلدان لهذه الأشياء إنه يقولون أوكي لازم نركز على الهلمت، على حزام الأمان، على كذا. بس سوت كوريا الجنوبية مشروع في الثمانينات إنها ركزت على البيئة، إنها حاولت قد ما تقدر إنها يعني سوت شيء اسمه School Zone Improvement Project، ركزت على إنه تكون طرق آمنة للمشي من المدرسة إلى منازل الطلبة. وخلال من 1988 ميلادي إلى 2012 قدرت إنها تقلل وفيات الأطفال من 1766 وفاة في السنة إلى 83 وفاة في السنة، وهذه 95% من يعني النسبة اللي نزلتها. فهم مثلا منعوا المواقف عند مداخل المدرسة، سووا أماكن مخصصة للمشاة فقط، ضوابط وأشياء ثانية. مثال ثاني هو توثيق المدينة من منظور الطفل، عشان نفهم إيش الأشياء اللي يحبها الطفل والأشياء اللي ما يحبها أو يخاف منها في المدينة. في مثال حلو في بولدر كولورادو اسمه Growing Up Boulder، وهو مشروع يمكنون فيه الطفل إنه يعرف إيش المشاكل وإيش الأشياء الإيجابية في المدينة، ويقوون الأطفال إنهم يعني يبغوا يلعبوا دور في تحسين المدينة. فرسموا خرائط للمدينة مع المدارس أطفال عمرهم 10 سنين، وأضافوا أشياء مثل أفضل شارع لتمشية الكلب، أفضل أماكن للآيس كريم، أفضل مكان هايكينج وأشياء زي كذا، وهذه ساعدت البلدية أنها تعرف إيش المميزات اللي عندها. في هذا مثال ثالث في بريطانيا اسمه Play Streets، إنه كل شارع سكني في الأحياء السكنية يحق له إذا الجيران يعني يتجمعوا مع بعض إنهم يسكرون هذا الشارع مرة في الأسبوع لمدة 5 ساعات في اليوم اللي هم يختارونه، عشان ما تدخل فيه السيارات والأطفال يلعبوا بالشارع مع بعض. يعني هم يتعرفوا على بعض أولاً، لأن هذول هم عادة مش مع بعض في المدرسة، والأهل يقدروا يكونوا من البيت قاعدين يطالعون يعني برا الشباك على أولادهم، فهم قريبين عليهم ويسهل عليهم الحياة في المدينة. هذه الصورة توضح مجموعة من الإجراءات اللي ممكن نعملها لتحقيق الرؤية. قاعد أشوف إن الوقت قاعد يقل، فما راح أدخل فيها كثير، بس إذا أحد يبغى يسألني عنها بعدين. وما أدري لو سمعتوا لما يقولون إنه سمك السالمون هو الانديكيتور سبيشيز في الأنهار، إنه يعني إذا شفتوا سمك سالمون صحته جيدة معناته إنه النهر بشكل عام صحته جيدة. هذا نفس الشيء إحنا ننظر للأطفال في المدن. إذا كانت صحة الأطفال كويسة وكانت المدينة مهيئة للأطفال بشكل جيد، معناته إنه المدينة مهيئة للجميع وهي صحتها كويسة بشكل عام. فإحنا نركز على المدن المهيئة للأطفال، بس هي بصراحة هي مدن يعني إذا قدرنا نطبقها هي مدن يعني صحية وجيدة لجميع الأعمار ولكل الناس. هذه بعض الجهات اللي مهتمة بالبحث اللي قاعدين نعمله من الجرايد والمجلات وهيئة تطوير مدينة لندن. وجبت نسخ من كتيب صغير في البحث، فيه يعني خلاصة البحث اللي قاعد نعمله وهو موجود هنا، فإذا أحد يبغى ياخذ نسخة يقدر يجيني بعد التوك. والشيء الثاني اللي جنب الصور هذه اللي على اليمين مرة هذه حلوة، اشتغلنا عليها بالشركة، هو virtual reality. يعني إنه إذا أنت حطيت هذه النظارات تقدر من خلالها كشخص بالغ تقدر تشوف المدينة من منظور طفل طوله 95 سنتي. عشان كذا سميناها Urban 95. فمرة أنصحكم تجربونها. أنا جبتها معاي وبتكون بكرة في الأيديا لاب الطابق الخامس من الساعة 6. مرة حلو، لأن يعني ناس في أطوال يعني مختلفة، يعني ما هي قصيرة. نتوقع ما نتوقع كيف الطفل يشوف المدينة، وصراحة مرة غريب، لأنه الطفل مع طوله وحجمه يشوف أشياء إحنا مو مرة ننتبه لها، حفر في الأرض، بلاوي، أشياء يعني مو مرة ننتبه لها. فمرة تجربة حلوة إنه نشوف كيف نظرة الطفل، وبعدين عن طريقها نحسن المدينة للطفل. وإذا في أي أسئلة أو تحبون تواصلون أو أي شيء يسعدني إني أسمع منكم. شكراً.
اوكي. اول شيء شكرا لولو على التوك الرائع. حقيقه في مشاريع انا اول مره اسمع عنها، يمكن although اختي ترى architect بس getting this from another perspective is always ما شاء الله تبارك الله ملهم.
حلو.
الان حافتح المجال للحضور اذا كان عندهم اسئله خاصه بالتوك اللي قدمته لولو. في عندنا 2 volunteers ممكن يساعدوا انهم يوصلوا لكم المايك إذا أي أحد عنده سؤال. تفضلي.
إحنا في السعودية وخصوصاً في الخبر نحتاج مرة يعني تركيز من ناحية الأربن أركيتكتشر. فإيش يعني من وجهة نظرك إيش your point يعني كخطوة أولى نبدأ فيها نتوجه لهذه الناحية في تحسين؟
سؤال حلو وكبير زي ما قال. يعني في اكشلي اقدر ارجع لهذه السلايد اللي كانت عن الاجراءات اللي ممكن نتخذها، لانه في اشياء اتوقع يعتمد على مين اللي قاعد ياخذ الاجراء. لو كان مثلا البلديه او جهه قياديه مثلا ممكن يعينون احد هو مسؤول عن يعني زي انهم يسوون معايير على ايش المشاريع الجديده اللي راح تصير، وكيف اي مشروع جديد لازم يكون يطبق هذه المعايير اللي احنا نبغى نوصل لها. مثلا هذا لو جهه بلديه. لو هو مستثمر او مطور عقاري مثلا، انه يفكر خارج النطاق العمل اللي هو فيه. يعني إذا هو بيبني مبنى واحد، بدل ما يركز بس على المبنى يركز على حتى الشبكة والأشياء اللي حوالين هذه المبنى، لأن هذه راح تزيد الرغبة الناس إنهم يكونون متواجدين في هذا المبنى، فيصلح الشوارع، الأشياء اللي قريبة منها، فيحسن بشكل عام. وإذا كان مثلا مهندس أو هو مصمم بحد ذاته، إنه يتعلم إيش الأشياء اللي تناسب البيئة هنا، إيش الأشياء اللي نحتاج منها أكثر، يتعاون أكثر مع المجتمع، يسأل المجتمع أكثر. يعني عندي أتوقع اقتراحات كثيرة، بس الخطوة الأولى أتوقع هي التوعية والكلام في هذا الموضوع، وأتوقع القيادة شيء أساسي كمان.
وما شاء الله لولو ما استثنيتي أحد من اللي يكونوا مسؤولين أو ضمن نطاق هذا التغيير أو النقلة للمشروع اللي ذكرتيه. عندنا كمان دقيقتين ناخذ سؤال ثاني إذا أحد عنده سؤال. تفضل. هنا في الدور.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. أنا سيد حميد لاندسكيب أركتكت.
حلو.
عندي سؤال استفسار بس من ناحية الكونسبت المتواجد حاليا برا مع الأطفال، مختلف في الانتراكتيف جيمز أو البلاي جراوند. هنا لاحظت أن أغلب شيء يعني بلوك وامشي عليه. فكيف تجي الفترة أو التوعية أنه لا يصير في انتراكتيف يعني مع الطفل، لأنه هذه الطريقة هي اللي بتزيد التوعية الطفل في الإديوكيشن أكثر.
أنا أضم صوتي لصوته صراحة. هذا السؤال.
إيش قصدك انتراكتيف؟
ما عندنا كثير.
أوكي. يعني أتوقع اللي فهمته منك إنه الطفل يكون يعني أتوقع هي يعني تعتمد على المصمم صح بآخر اليوم. يعني أنت مثلا لاندسكيب أركيتكت إذا جايك مشروع تصمم بلاي جراوند، يعني يحق لك انك تسوي شيء انتراكتيف اكثر. هو يبغى لنا هذه الكفاءات وهذه يعني القدره انه احنا كمصممين نسوي اللي احنا نطمح فيه، والناس راح صح. لا لازم، هذا وقت التغيير. يعني اذا في فكره انت تحس انها مو موجوده، هذا الوقت انك تطرحها وتسويها.
أشكركم على المشاركة في أول حديث لنا في هذا اليوم. شكرا لولو، أتمنى تساعدوني نحيي لولو. شكرا لها على هذا اللقاء. شكرا لك. هذه بس كانت البداية. الآن السياق حق اللقاء حيختلف اللغة فقط. اللغة حقتنا حتنتقل للغة الإنجليزية. So I'll be switching to English. أي أحد يحتاج زي ما ذكرت يستخدم الترانسليشن هيدز، الفولنتيرز موجودين يساعدوه في هذا الموضوع، وكمان موجود في الانترنس جيت حقت المنصة. We heard first from Lulu about the adaptation حق different mindsets of helping kids to be more playful in wherever they are. But let's talk more about public places since you mentioned it already. Public places, I will share my very humble childhood experience. It was my favorite when I interact with the sand, with everything, and I get dirt, and absolutely my mom wouldn't be happy at all. But that was really something I enjoyed it and doing it. Reimagining the public places where there's no boundaries, where you are so connected and interacted with everything around you. This is a picture that we all know it, don't you agree? And we had an experience with it. But let's reimagine this picture within a lens of art and design. Our next speaker had this experience and would like to share his thought about that. Our next speaker, he is a co-founder of Fabric, an artist and a lecturer in architect and design based in London. Please help me welcome on the stage now Mohamad Hafeda to talk more about that.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here. And thank you, Tanween, for the invitation to Robert and Sultan. They are here. Thanks. So in this presentation, I will explore Fabric's models of the social playground as spaces of protest that negotiate particular urban and political contestations and hierarchies in a site or place. So some of these models occur outside designated spaces of play, such as the playground and part of everyday life. And as such, I will explore or link play to theory of spatial practice, theory of space and everyday life, to provide a framework to what we call public play practices, which is the topic of our workshop this week here in Dammam. So I'll start with play, playfulness, and protest. Playfulness as a disposition is most attributed to children and their practices of play. Children play with everything. They use their imagination to interrupt the everyday and to ask, what else can I do with this? Whether an object or situation, a child will subvert it, break its order, and invent it as new. So that play and playfulness are part of a diverse range of social and spatial practices across age, gender, cultures, and occurs in different urban settings, private or public, such as playing with limits, or playing with ideas, or playing with words. Stuart Lester defines play as a state that continuously questions bodies, space, and materials to see what more can be done with them. Colin Ward adds that play is a politically charged, non-conclusive practice of breaking order on a small scale in everyday life. And he further articulates that play is a form of protest that may be low-key, exercised through spontaneous, impromptu, and resourceful acts that stake a claim for modest redistribution of time and space. So there are two types of play, as Roger Caillois notes. The first, called regulated play or ludos, and follows rules set by others, and the second is self-directed play, pedia. So these two practices are somewhat in conflict. The main difference is that pedia is ambiguous and unpredictable. It is a practice that unfolds through the process of playing itself, prompting dynamic responses to surrounding, restrictive, or unfamiliar conditions. So further, it creates and then amends its own rules, simultaneously subverting existing ones. So these distinctions among play practices parallel those noted in spatial practice as defined by Michel de Certeau that produces everyday life. That is the difference between spatial practice as a strategy and spatial practice as tactic. So strategy for de Certeau is always the domain of power, while tactics are unpredictable actions of protest or resistance by the powerless. Tactics are articulated through spontaneous and continuous adaptations, such as self-directed play in breaking the order, that have been created by strategies of power. These are rules set by others. So these are some of the conceptual ideas behind our work in Fabric. And in Fabric, we propose that an activity approached with a playful mindset and taking place in the public realm is a tactic of protest because of its ability to subvert, to continuously pose questions, and to break established orders. So these playful tactics of protest used in different urban settings with the aim of negotiating conflict, often at a very small scale, and they are ways in which we play a part in the making of our cities. And we refer to these activities as public play practices. So here, practice of play become operative outside the domain of play itself and entering the city's sociopolitical field or life. So through a series of site-specific and socially engaged art projects, art and design, in the Middle East, primarily in Palestinian refugee camps, and the UK, Fabric has developed a series of models of social playgrounds that look at the potential of play as a mechanism for negotiation and protest outside the playground and within the city, to promote or propose public play practices. And we take clues from Leanne Lefebvre, who notes the playground as the smallest stitch in the urban fabric, one that ensures its cohesion with specific strength in connecting people to spaces. So the research of the social playground highlights the resistance to abstract political notions in the tangible everyday situations and from the view of children and through them their families. But what type of play is protest, particularly in our work of the social playground? So this diagram, scale of play, uses our different models of the social playground to explore why do we play on a scale from play for play towards play with a purpose. So while all the play practices mentioned here are politically charged, some are more intuitive, where the protest is inherent and subtle, while others are more intentionally subversive, with the protest more politically propositional. And what is helpful about this diagram for us is to analyze our methodology of play and visualize the role of play in each of our projects. So the type and scale of protest it holds at each stage of the project, who is it by and how is it done. And we observe on that scale play for happiness, to follow a curiosity, for example, to make a friend, or play as a cultural practice to bring community together or to respond to limited resources. And I will talk more now about these examples. So we discovered that play can be about play itself and can function as a form of protest too against social ideas, representations, authorities, and processes of decision-making in the public realm. So I will discuss some of the social playground models used in this diagram, and we'll start with the hidden playground. So our project Play Space in 2005 is a good example of how public spaces in Burj Barajni, Palestinian refugee camp in Beirut, were transformed by children into a social playground. So I'm talking here about their existing play practices. As the children search for spaces to play in the absence of any childhood spaces within the camp. Seeing the camp as their play territory, the children established a hidden topography of play through their creative reuse of the architecture around them, taking inspiration from the ambiguity of the broken, the incomplete, and the absent. For example, Muhammad Ali's game titled Grandma's Washing Plane Race. He invented the game when his grandmother visited them every Monday to do her washing, and the washing lines on the rooftop created boundaries for Muhammad to cross through his paper plane. So this is Muhammad Ali's play manual as a research document that we worked on it with him that can now be given to anyone, enabling them to play his game and create a similar spatial environment. So children's invented patterns of play or their public play practices were acts of protest because while the children had the least claim to the space, they managed to insert their playground fleetingly and frequently into public spaces and in between the functions or programs of others, mainly adults. So these insertions revealed how different community groups used and appropriated the space and how they engaged with each other. The second one, I will talk about the programmatic playground. So the research into the children invented play and the hidden playground led us like Fabric, to propose with the children new play spaces. So children pointed out things that are not working in the camp, such as leaking water, the poor infrastructure, unemployment, and things that are lacking, such as designated spaces for play. So the children's temporary art installations created what we call the programmatic playground. So these are our art installations that we produced with them. So these kind of programmatic playground, they suggested alternative solutions and institutions for the camp, infrastructure, and public spaces. So for example, in this image, Motanturi proposed a drawing device using leaking water that they collected to make or to mark children's play territory. Another one, the shadow garden and the floating bed by Isra and Maha, offering workers and unemployed men a place to nap. The traveling exhibition in a box by Jamal and Bilal that moves across the camp and brings children artifacts and stories from around the world. The unexpected theater, here Mo wanted to be a magician and he created a pop-up theater space in a parking lot for magical events and surprises. The Watchtower of Happiness, more metaphorically, Adwan wanted to go up to the highest place to find the sad children from their windows through his magical-looking device in order to help them. So here you can see the chair play structure creating a dialogue with the adult social space, made up also by chairs behind them, and the physical occupation of space by these proposals and their attachment on to adult spaces are instrumental in creating direct discussions or negotiations or protest around them with the community, and to put forward children concerned to be taken seriously by adults in the camp and by those involved in policy making, such as the authorities, NGOs, and urban planners. So the process also showed the children what they could achieve within their immediate space and with limited resources. So from that point, we further explored different models that the social playground can take to negotiate different scales of contested space and different hierarchies. Such as proposing the fragmented playground for the public spaces of Nahr al-Barid camp in North Lebanon after its destruction in the war in 2007. So the proposal was part of the camp reconstruction project and responded to the camp dense urban living and the lack of designated play spaces. So this meant that the playground is fragmented in the camp spaces and appropriates existing architectural elements such as handrails, windows, edges, and staircases to become multifunctional and intergenerational play spaces or spaces. So the fragmented playground declares different groups' rights to space and the sharing of space at different time of the day and by different gender and age groups. So in a different context, in the Talbiyi camp in Amman, Jordan, the social playground took a different form. We were given a site to intervene in, part of the camp development project by the UNRWA. And we worked on a similar participatory process with the children and their families, and we proposed the Edge of Play, which is a play space for children and a space for women to meet and wait for the distribution of rations from the UN office. It's also a wedding space when covered with traditional metal and fabric awning. So the construction of the Edge of Play brought loud negotiations to the construction site, transforming it into a conflictive playground, which led to the closing down of the space and fencing it. And here the main reason for the opposition of the space is that it replaced the space of a resident parking space, and it was also argued that such a public space could attract males to the site and therefore infringe on women's privacy. So the permanent and large-scale nature of the interventions or the protest in the last two camps or the last two models of the social playground, in comparison to the children's temporary art installation that I presented previously, meant entering into the realm of the political, and as a result, the suspension of the social playground as spaces of negotiation. So now moving to a very different context, to London, and one of the main concerns our work addressed in the context of a housing estate in London is how can familiar urban settings that are underused and unappreciated become sites of curiosity. So through Fabric's collaborative project at the South London Gallery in 2010 and 12 here, the Shop of Possibilities was developed. And it was an invention studio and a compressed playground set up at the Gordan housing estate in Peckham in London, in South London. And so we worked with the children from the estate, so worked together to create a series play kits made of objects collected from recycling of residents at the estate. Inspired by the ready-made and the loose parts concepts, the invention shop unfolds to occupy and reactivate forgotten public spaces in the grounds of the estate by installing social toys and games to invite the residents and make friendships. So the personal histories and the stories of the invented games were documented in the archive room of the shop. And I will present the last model, which is the action playground. which involves the public actions of young people on a market street in London and in various locations. So their actions of protest include sitting on the pavement, scaling a wall, climbing on traffic cones, and walking in the middle of the road, to mention a few. So they made commentaries on the way the youth were excluded from the public realm by them extending boundaries and claiming territories. So we hope that this talk has examined the potential of play in the public realm as a mechanism for encouraging public play engagement and as a social activator on a small scale in everyday life. So by looking at the social playground within and outside the traditional playground as a public social space, we understand how communities operate, how they innovatively respond to limited resources, and how they negotiate the right to space. So the social playground also reveals programmatic aspiration through the way the children and their families have engaged with these spaces, adjusting them and reimagining their potential. So the social playground opened up a space for people to protest against existing conditions, instigate processes of resettlement, especially in the camps, and exercise notions of belonging. Thank you.
Thank you, Mohamad, for a very inspirational project that you are working on. And now I would like to open the space for everyone. If you have any questions for Mohamad, to raise it. He showed different nice scenes for the kids, how they are being really smart about the games that they want to play with whatever minimum resources and tools they have. So any question? Yes, we have here.
Thank you for your talk. I'm wondering, how open were the parents when you were dealing with these situations and these installations to having their children participate in unusual projects, and also because it seems like some of those camps may have seemed to be possibly a bit dangerous or possibly unwelcoming to them, not exactly child-friendly as Lulu's presentation was describing. So I was just wondering how open they were to that, if that was a struggle you had.
I mean, we usually start the projects with a series of workshops. Let me take this. And we enter the camp through kind of collaboration with cultural institutions that already exist there. So there is kind of a network that we operate within, which kind of facilitate our engagement with the children and their parents. I'm not sure how dangerous I mean, these are refugee camps in Beirut. There is a bit of military presence in refugee camps, in some of them, particularly in the one in Lebanon. But again, because we enter with kind of collaboration with internal institutions that kind of facilitate that interaction. And families usually, or entering kind of the space of children or through them, it's kind of a more an accessible, an easy way, or a smart way of entering the camp and their families through them in a way. So it was an interesting point to work also with the families through the starting point of working with the children. So they become the access actually to their families too.
And maybe you agree with me that the theme itself also helps to talk about like the games.
Yes, because it sounds a very kind of non-political
exactly.
issue. So it's a kind of a good entry to address through it bigger problematics about space to start with, and more about the representation of people in their spaces. So it's a playful tool.
It's a playful tool. Any other question for that? Maybe I have a question if no one. Do you have? Oh, okay. Mr. Eric.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your talk. My question is about
who funds this work and what are they funding? Are they funding the specific, are they using the language that you're using about playful space as a protest, or is that the lens that you bring to it?
This is us. This is our reflection on these projects over 15 years. So this is something just to mention that these projects that I showed today, they've been in development for 15 years. We started in 2003 with very small fund. I think my partner Reem here, you remember, knows better. So it was like initiative between friends, us. So she invited me to the first project with money from, very little money. But there is a very small fund. It's like a very small fund from cultural institutions in Lebanon, and even from family and friends, or we should say it, family and friends. And they are very small budget project. But then after building a bit of portfolio from these kind of initiatives, then we get invitation from, been taken seriously from people are working with bigger budgets such as the UNRWA. So we've been invited to apply our method of work in different contexts. So here the fund started changed and working more with institutions as an invitation. And later on in London, because the cultural institutions are more established, this is another entry. So it's been kind of a longer process with collaborations, and through them the ideas, the conception of it start to develop in relation to the context. So the urban context helped a lot in developing the concepts of these models, if this is what the question is about.
Thank you so much for answering the questions. Please help me thank Mohamad for the second time for having him on stage. Thank you. I remember, I think it was yesterday when I read a quote that says, playing is the highest form of research. Being the highest form of research means how can you really focus your full attention, mental and other kind of skills you have to do the enough analysis, the enough effort to get somewhere with that. Means playing is not something only for fun, as I mentioned at the very beginning. It is something more than that. And starting to adapt this mindset of what's really playing could bring to the context in architecture. I was talking to our next speaker about architecture, and he was telling me that before, architecture was about the function and the efficiency of the building, but now it's kind of, they are having another twist of that and thinking about it of how can architecture be more fun, be more playful for the people, to have a really full experience with that. So I will leave the stage for our next speaker to elaborate more on this. He is an architect and an urban designer and a founder of Harry Dobbs Design. And his name is Harry Dobbs. Please help me welcome Harry Dobbs.
Hello, good, yes. Thank you, Summer, and thank you for inviting us to speak today and to your wonderful institution. It's a privilege to be here. I want to talk about play and fun and excitement and why these things are increasingly important for our work in designing cities. I'm an architect, but have done a lot of my works really in urban design, the designing of cities. So firstly, I wanted to talk about a bit about what we do and the scales we work at. So on one level, we work at the scale of the city, and that's really designing how cities evolve and change over time, and the behaviors and patterns of use that go on in cities. The scale down from that, we work at an architectural scale, the buildings that make up our cities. And then we work right the way down to the products. We do quite a lot of product design, and we're interested in that human scale, the things we touch and use every day. For example, this is a cycle rack for New York. It's a very tangible thing that we use every day. However, having said that, I want to clarify that the real aim of all this stuff is not so much these physical things. It's designing how cities work as a living, breathing, and social and cultural event. We see cities as a really amazing phenomenon where sort of millions of social interactions are happening every second. And the physical aspects I just spoke about, which are products and architecture and buildings, they're just a means to an end to facilitate and help navigate this social event. It's something we're constantly reminding our clients, and I think there's an automatic focus very often to think of if you're an architect or a product designer that they're buying a product or an art or building. But really, when we talk to our clients, the physical hardware is the glass, the concrete, and the metal. Is something we have to tell them, this is going to cost you. This is the thing that's going to cost you. Depending on the scale of the project, it could be thousands, hundreds, big cities, billions. But it's the software, really, the social spaces and the meaningful interactions in cities. These are the things that make cities desirable, or what they're building, and the environments they're building desirable. And it creates the long-term value, really, the social value and the cultural value. That's where the real payback is. And cities are increasingly aware of this now, and that this is what really defines their economic success. It's increasingly less about necessarily a city having the tallest, shiniest tower, even though that still goes on. It's often a lot more cities are competing to be the most exciting, fun experience or destination in the world. And it's a competitive game. So of the top 6 worlds by visitor income, just to sort of give the economic background to it, they sort of start off at Dubai, London, New York, Bangkok, Tokyo, Paris. We know all these cities. And they all these top 6 sit also in the top 10 rating of the most exciting cities to visit and be in. There are various different ratings of that, but they're consistently in that sphere. And it's not by accident. It's very heavily invested in by these cities. It's an important part of how they operate. And as an idea or an indication of this, since 2000, each of these cities has bid for the Olympic Games, and also, moreover, each of these cities has built or started to build a giant Ferris wheel, or a sort of fun Ferris wheel. And in that sense, these cities are sort of developing skylines that increasingly sort of resemble a fairground almost, even though it sort of goes back to the first Ferris wheel was in Chicago, and it was, interestingly, Paris is now built. I think Paris is the one on the top right for you. The Chicago Ferris wheel was originally designed as a competitor to an answer to the Eiffel Tower. And now that's Paris has built its own Ferris wheel itself, sort of picking up on that. But the increasingly sort of form in this sense is no longer driven by functionality necessarily and urban efficiencies and infrastructure. That's there, but it's going beyond that, and there's an increasingly drive to form is following fun, really. It's a way of cities, not just of providing environments that are fun and exciting, but it's a way of communicating that they're fun and exciting. It's a way of attracting an audience that is now global of visitors from around the world. I'm going to briefly lead on from that phenomenon really, and look at how some of our work starts to address that in urban design. And primarily, we use play as a means, sort of three aspects. So one is a means of participation, getting people engaged and involved in what cities are doing and how we're working as parts of cities, with parts of cities. Play as a process, a way of delivering the changes we're making to city in a playful way or through a game process, and also play as a program, more direct really. So designing or creating strategies where they introduce new activities into existing areas of city that are play-based. So firstly, as a play as a program. It's a project we won a competition for with the City of London, which is right at the heart of London. It's a 1 square mile. It's often called the Square Mile. It's actually the oldest bit of London. It's where Roman London used to be. But nowadays, it's actually it's our financial district, and it's pretty it has been for a long time quite monofunctional. It's primarily associated with salary workers, 500,000 salary workers coming into work every day, and coming into work to run our financial system. So it's not the most likely location you'd have thought for play and fun and excitement. But one of the insights we realized when we started the project was that it was quite an amazing location in terms of it could get 500,000 people in and out of that bit of city in 2 hours, better than any other venue or destination in London. Any stadium, Wembley Stadium, the Olympic City, the new Olympic City, none of them could actually beat how efficiently people got in and out of this bit of city. You know, it's an infrastructural sort of capability, but it had this sort of amazing capability. And the other aspect was it was empty much of the time, from evenings and weekends. It just emptied out, and it's a ghost town, actually, or has been. And it's a huge waste of a space, really. And so this map I've just been playing sort of starts to give you the idea of how people have moved in and out of London in a day. It's using all the data from London Transport. So you get this idea of people sort of moving in and out of this space and at quite large numbers. So we developed a strategy with the financial district, the authority runs the financial district, to look at the City of London. By day, it would remain a financial district, the City of London. And by night and weekend, it would become this event space, the City of Fundon. And it was a sort of fun play of words, but it went to a sort of more interesting, or sort of deeper thing about how you can schedule cities and how a time-based element to urban design. You know, we're used to scheduling events and programs, but cities and their ability to schedule on a large scale opens up huge opportunities to unlock existing spaces, often that have amazing capabilities like this one. And you know, it's got amazing. The other amazing thing was actually no one's around in the weekend. Not many people live there, so you can actually make quite a lot of noise. If you do that in any other part of London, it's a disaster. Everyone complains. So it sort of seemed ideal as this event space. So. And the City of London we're working with them currently on how to do this, how this city of fun and city of finance can coexist in the same place but at different times, and have sort of two parallel cities in one place, and attract a whole different audience to this city of tourists, families, and children. And it really starts to change what that space is. Secondly, I want to look at players' participation. This was looking at some of our projects we did during the Olympics in London, 2012 Olympics. It's probably, the Olympics is probably one of the largest global urban events around, and these huge infrastructure stadia and event spaces. But they were all largely contained in Olympic sites in London. Quite sort of in East London was our Olympic sort of city that we built for this, regenerating a large area of London. Our work was slightly at a different scale. It was looking at engaging the wider city with this event. So we worked with the UK government on pavilions that popped up in London during the event that had an educational relationship to the Olympics, involving young people. This was one in Tech City, and making sure that this event wasn't just a sort of celebration that just happened in a park that was almost sort of within London, but slightly, contained out from the main city of everyday life. It spilled out into the city was a key thing. Also, the sort of cultural content, not an educational content, but also cultural content of getting people to working with different communities actually to get content that develop content that sort of came out and got expressed within the streets. This was a project with a school and embedding, I think we had 4,000 cat's eyes, the things that usually are reflectors on roads, drilled them into a wall, and working with the school on how to sort of, it was their sort of cultural response to the Olympics. I don't know quite how we got the flying cat in there, but that was, I think that it was all about having them participate and feel involved in this citywide event, and leave a memory of that as well. This is, this is still there, still lasts. As cars go past, it still sort of glistens with light every day. Third one project, it was more for the London parks, and it was more of an interaction piece really. And it was looking at how we've got millions of visitors visiting London. How do you get them to interact and sort of engage with each other? How can you encourage that? And it was a canopy. It was an interactive canopy that when it, obviously, it will invariably rain in London when we have a sporting event. That's what happens always. So we designed a rain canopy, and it requires 2 people's weight to activate it. So only when 2 people sit down on it does this thing come and shelter you. So it requires you to work with someone else if you're stuck in the middle of a park to get your shelter, and it might have to be a stranger who you don't know. It was a way of breaking the ice, and a fun, playful way to create those moments of shared endeavour and connection that, especially if you're a visitor, it sort of can be make the difference. Thirdly, players process, and this was a project that sort of works with this in Manhattan. We looked at 6,100 cycle stands all over the city. It was the response was to take these and turn them into something special, really. A cycle rack that was also a brand to encourage sustainable transport, and based on the I Love New York logo. That's sort of an older logo that's well known for the brand of New York. And once you turn a product like this, that's usually municipal, into a desirable product that is, you can choose the color, and alongside that was developed a way of allowing people to, a game that allowed people to choose where these went. It wasn't the local authority that chose where they went. People were allowed to engage with that and also choose the color of their cycle rack near their house. And it changed the relationship between people and these municipal products that, again, gives them a sense of ownership and a different relationship with these things that are usually sort of slightly left as municipal afterthoughts. In that vein, we're also working with pop-up environments. We work with a peer here in London on who run a lot of pop-up spaces. And we've been developing formats for pop-up spaces where there's, this is in near Oxford Street retail area, that provides a different kind of retail to the surroundings and encourages people to, for the retail side, it's quite good for the area. It encourages people to come and explore more often this changing environment. But also it gives them a say. There's a sort of gamification for this as well, where they have a say in what happens in those environments over time and how that relates to the cultural event of London. So leading on, one of the things going forward is we're increasingly looking at interaction in public space, and this is a 1.3 kilometre, part of a 1.3 kilometre installation for Oxford Street again. It's interactive, it allows people to relate, the lights respond to the movement of people below, but also on social media input. That is, those levels of interaction technology is making, well, it's changing what you can do. It's around, but the possibilities are changing. But also one of the bigger changes we're really sort of increasingly playing with is allowing us, how technology is allowing us to create a more direct connection between a playful activity and people who might not be experts in a field of delivering public environments to the finished product or urban environment. And with CNC manufacture, rapid prototyping, rapid manufacture as well, it gives us an enormous potential to change our role as designers into that of enablers and more directly realize the aims and agendas of those who aren't experts, who are the end user and resident. And that, I'll leave you with the thought that sort of where we find it most exciting, it changes the idea of authorship in the city, of who designs our city, and I think that's where these things are really changing. I've shown most projects we've been doing in London or in New York. I think were the ones I showed, but we're now we're working in Riyadh and in Abu Dhabi and with clients who are really interested in how these technologies and can help facilitate these things. And yeah, it's very exciting.
Thank you so much for the great informative speech. Thank you. And now I'll open the opportunity for the attendee to raise any questions they have for Mr. Hary. So we talked more about, we have someone here. That was a good.
I might, yeah, I can tell. I can't tell you about Riyadh actually officially, but it's to do with public space and neighbourhoods, and it's about it's a lot to do with walkability and the social. What happens in neighbourhoods when you make them walk? What are the social implications of that, and how to optimise that? And in Abu Dhabi, it's about. It's actually about public transport, and the context of that is they were going to build a metro, and that's been shelved, and they are looking at how to make the bus system more, engage people with the bus system. There's a reticence among a lot of people in Abu Dhabi to get on the buses, and we're interested in how to change minds and behaviours, and how you do that. We're interested in places where that's happened before, like in the London Underground. When that first developed, there was a huge investment in the London Underground as a cultural space, and how to make people feel that this transport system is core to their cultural engagement and belonging in the city. And that's part of our approach that we're looking at with Abu Dhabi.
Okay, that was a smart question to know more about the projects happening. So any other question we have here?
Thank you, Mr. Hary. You gave a wonderful talk. It was really inspiring, like how you took your own path in architecture and how you transformed it in a way to fit your vision, which is like the idea of fun. You know, it should be like a playful thing, so I really like that. And I have a question. I'm still like, I'm an aspiring architect, hopefully. I'm still in my final year in high school. And I was wondering, like, what do you have a specific like advice to give an inspiring architect in general?
Let me think. That's a difficult one.
This is a high responsibility on you now.
I think the key on it that you learn is there are lots of you have a training as an architect, and it's an amazing training. There are two things I'd say. One is don't rely on if you go ahead and become an architect. Don't rely on being an architect as being the end game. That's the beginning. It's like the status or the name as an architect is secondary. What it does, it gives you an amazing training that spans social aspects, cultural aspects, engineer, a very comprehensive, broad range of things. And that's after that, you've got especially in architecture is a very globalized industry, actually. Everyone is from all over the world, works all over the world. So being a generic architect is difficult, I'd say. You've got to find your path, and you should try and find a path that's unique. And you'll find it. If you look for it, you'll find it. So that would be my general advice.
I have a follow-up question. So
okay.
A very passionate potential architect.
Thank you. So actually, when it comes to studying architecture, I'm facing a dilemma as to where to study it. So I went to the UK. I actually took a portfolio prep course in UAL, and I tried myself in the US as well, but I'm still not sure. Do you think, what do you think what do you recommend as to kind of university-wise and or specific characteristics, I guess, of university?
It's difficult, and I think they're horses for courses, as it were. So I think different people, it will suit different places, and that's really important. So if someone says, "Oh, this is the greatest school," you've got to find it out for yourself, and go and visit them. Actually, go and visit them. Ask to go to a crit or something. That's a pretty good way of finding out. Visit someone being critted and feel the atmosphere of it and what they're doing. And I think, if I'm honest, the one thing, and this is subjective from my point of view, but I think when an architecture school focuses on people primarily, that's important. As a profession, we can sometimes certain ends forget about people, and we get obsessed about form and a lot of things that are important. But for me, I think I would say that if you start with the people, you're always going to be good. You'll be all right. Things can go wrong in architecture when we forget that. So some schools are more focused on that than others. But I think everyone has their places that would suit them better than others, I think.
Thanks for sharing this piece of wisdom from your experience and in architecture. I hope you got something for today. And part of it is being here in منصة تنوين and learning from everyone, getting inspired as well. Thank you so much. Please help me thank him again for the great speech. So I would like first to welcome the crowd that just joined us in منصة تنوين. We are happy to have you all today here. And we were talking about playing, and that is fitting all the ages. And also all the segments of people, teachers, executive, and all people playing different roles in life. And our next speaker will challenge an aspect, because he raised really a very interesting question, and I never get surprised because he's a Bostonian, and all the Bostonians really think about technology in different perspectives. And he just raised a question saying, can corporate and organization play for better decision making? And that really raised the standard high. We're now talking about decision makers and how they can play for having a better decision makings. So I will leave the stage for our next speaker to elaborate more on that. He is a civic media professor and a director of the Engagement Lab. Please help me welcome Mr. إريك.
Thank you very much for being here, and thank you for the invitation. It's really a pleasure. So I'm a civic designer. I'm not an architect, but I like to hang out with them. And what I do as a civic designer is I design civic process. I design ways in which people interact with one another. So I'm going to tell you a story. On a recent warm summer's evening in Boston, Massachusetts, a group gathered in a community center in the city's Chinatown to discuss the placement of digital kiosks and sensors in the sidewalk. This was not a group of technologists. They were local advocates, residents, educators, and teens asked to advise on the city's plan for technology in the public realm. More specifically, they were asked to govern an exploration zone, an area of 4 square blocks in Chinatown where we, in collaboration with the city, temporarily installed technologies so that residents could question their usefulness and test their functionality. This was part of a pilot project in Boston called Beta Blocks, an experiment in involving people in conversations and decisions about data, surveillance, and the public value of technology. Would people want air quality sensors in their neighborhood? What would they do with the data? Would they want free Wi-Fi? What if the Wi-Fi beacons were also collecting data about users? Would they want a digital kiosk with local community information? What if it also delivered relevant ads based on who's walking by? Well, if you invite people to talk about data surveillance in the United States, they might bring up Cambridge Analytica, or the Russian collection of facial data from a viral Facebook app, or their fear of city governments sharing data with US Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Keep talking, and they may extol the conveniences of automatic tolling stations on highways or responsive traffic signals. The point is, no righteous path exists in the municipal uptake of novel technologies. Do these technologies violate privacy and personal liberties? Do they enhance freedom through mobility and convenience? Do they do all of these things? Well, most data scientists don't even understand everything that can be done with data, so why would cities be invested in consulting the public about things that the experts don't fully comprehend? The answer is that most cities are not so invested. Decisions about sensors, kiosks, utilities, street furniture, and any range of data-hungry smart technologies are typically made by city officials in conversation with tech companies. This is not due to bad intentions necessarily, but to a system that makes no distinction between a park bench and a sensor. For most procurement offices in the United States, an object in the environment and an object that is actively monitoring the environment and the people in it are practically the same thing. But the truth is they are not. When urban technologies incorporate private user data into decisions about shape and function of the public realm, the stakes are higher than when benches are placed. When technology passively collects data from people on the street, either by sensing devices or sensing bodies, a collection process in which one doesn't even have the opportunity to click I accept, then the stakes are higher still. Beta Blocks is an experiment in inviting the public into determining the value of urban technologies. It brings together residents, government, and the private sector to address the problems introduced by these urban technologies. The common sense approach would be to teach people about data and how it's used, allow people to have informed conversations about data, and then arrive at decisions. But the novelty of the problem, that is, the use of personal data to determine what ads to present on sidewalk kiosks, means few precedents exist to model good decisions. With the process muddled by the uncertainty of the novelty and overwhelmed by the technical complexity of the issue, the linear path from information to decision is disrupted. Government organizations tend to prioritize efficiency in decision-making. They are invested in charting a path to a goal with the least amount of friction. But when the problems are novel and decision spaces are complex, efficiency can be at odds with the goal of building trust. The Beta Blocks pilot provides useful fodder for considering alternative paths to public judgment, as the strategy is not to create straightforward approaches to multi-stakeholder decision-making, but to make room for play, for freedom of movement and thought within very specific structures. Through the creation of what Gabriel Mugar and I call meaningful inefficiencies, a plurality of people can embrace uncertainty
within a clear set of rules for a comfortable amount of time before reaching judgment. And this is also a plug for my new book. The concept of meaningful inefficiencies is inspired by game systems. The decision a player makes to step outside of everyday life and into a play space or magic circle almost always inserts an inefficiency into some larger system of exchange and interaction. The philosopher Bernard Suits, in his book The Grasshopper, describes the experience of playing a game as follows. To play a game is to attempt to achieve a specific state of affairs, which he calls a pre-lusory goal, using only means permitted by rules, which he calls lusory means, where the rules prohibit use of more efficient in favor of less efficient means, and where the rules are accepted just because they make possible such activity. So a pre-lusory goal is typically identified by asking the question, how do I win? And is defined for the player before he or she enters the game system. I win in chess by capturing my opponent's king. Once I understand that, I can enter into the magic circle of the game, which is defined by a set of rules, which Suits would call pre-lusory means, that stop me from achieving my goal, capturing my opponent's king, by the most efficient means possible, which is reaching across the board, picking it up, and saying, I've captured it. These constitutive rules, as Suits would say, provide the restrictions and limitations necessary for play. And interestingly, players accept these rules precisely because they allow them to play. Thus, games are, by definition, inefficient. Play requires the space that contained inefficiency affords. Put another way, meaningful inefficiencies is the productive lag in systems generated by rules which enforce and justify playing. So, participatory budgeting is a process wherein a portion of a city's or nation's budget is given over to public decision making. For example, this can be a meaningful inefficiency. This was first started in Brazil in the 1970s. It presents a goal and inserts lengthy deliberation as an obstacle to achieving it. The result is not merely to slow down the budgeting process, but to open up a piece of the process to public deliberation, so as both to instruct the public in how budgeting works and empower it in shaping outcomes. The outcome of meaningful inefficiencies in this example is to hold space for people, for social interaction, and for moments of productive encounter in which exist infinite possibilities. Without these encounters, organizations dictate a world prescribed by systems predicted by their makers with little room for variability. Most public sector organizations are eager to adopt new technologies or tools that cut the fat or reduce friction in the system, not the other way around. Indeed, there is necessarily a tension between a meaningful inefficiency and what I call a mere inefficiency. When a website loads slowly or one has to wait in 3 different lines at a government agency to renew papers, these mere inefficiencies mostly lead to anxiety and frustration for users. In the rush to address them, especially when introduced to digital tools that are seemingly designed for such a purpose, organizations can easily design against the values of the people they seek to engage. Incorporating dialogue, providing opportunities for the public to explore the algorithm, and investing in building the public's capacity to understand the data being used are all meaningful inefficiencies needed for effective and generative urban governance. So the impact a process like beta blocks can have on a city is tied to its ability to bring multiple stakeholders into conversation around the novelty of urban technologies, without presumption of neat or simple conclusions. The value is in the relationships that form over time, with the process functioning as the rules and mechanics that structure play. Beta blocks brings to light the tension between the certainty of a product's functionality and the uncertainty of its use. It generates an ambiguity that allows relationships to form as people are drawn together by their active questioning. I will go so far as to say that this state of ambiguity is a required condition of participatory city making around any novel problem. Public policy should be guided by the humble recognition that no one has the answer. Ambiguity in this situation is not a bad thing. It is necessary. But for most practitioners who are operating with deadlines and deliverables, it can be a deeply uncomfortable place to be. So design firms like IDEO have called out ambiguity as a state designers need to embrace. Being comfortable with ambiguity mitigates the tendency for designers or anyone in a consulting position to feel like they need an answer at every moment. Embracing ambiguity gives designers permission to dive deep into understanding the nuance of a particular situation or environment, bringing their clients along on the exploration as they speak with potential users and test out early ideas. This is what it means to be a designer. It means to be comfortable with that ambiguity, to open up that space. But the role of ambiguity in government or public sector work is actually quite different. That it starts and ends with questions about public value means the boundaries defining needs and interests can be far messier and more nebulous than that which a client relationship might contend. To factor multiple stakeholders, including residents and workers and visitors, into decision-making processes, to ensure trust and ownership across them all, to create spaces for vulnerability and play among competing interests requires that practitioners and organizations tolerate a certain level of ambiguity. And for this work to be done right, well beyond simply tolerating it, ambiguity must actually be incorporated into design process. The open-ended exploration of the needs and interests of multiple stakeholders provides the flexibility required to create valuable products and experience. The alternative to being open-ended in these cases would mean accepting the default values of novel technologies and bypassing the complexities and contradictions of working across a range of perspectives, needs, and interests. Ambiguity cannot be a permanent state. So it's good to have, but it cannot be permanent. Indeed, there is no better way to squander trust with people than to accomplish nothing. The designer needs self-consciously to construct a space for play before arriving at specific objects or outcomes. This space for play allows the designer and the stakeholders to reflect upon the moral and ethical dimensions of the design's mechanisms before they disappear into the mundane. So take 311 as an example. There we go. So this is a tool created or incorporated by many municipal governments around the world to enable citizens to report urban problems, like potholes, graffiti, darkened streetlights, and so on. The technology quickly found an application within government operations and is now a regular part of doing business in many cities. In this case, this is a case of a successful urban technology. However, even though it's successful, few groups have challenged the promised value of such a tool. So I want to use 311 as a way of really sort of pressing on what's valuable with urban technologies. Who is best served by this technology? Who is excluded? What kinds of things can users report, and who gets to decide? Where are the inequities in reporting, and what is the responsibility of government to address them? So these questions are difficult, and they may run counter to the goal of increasing government efficiency in solving everyday urban problems. So in the majority of cases, the ambiguity of 311 has been quickly erased for clarity of function. So the French philosopher Simone de Beauvoir writes in The Ethics of Ambiguity that it is easy, when faced with ambiguity, to follow the line of least resistance into unambiguity, whatever that may be, she says. But despite the many bureaucratic obstacles to getting things done in large organizations, there is strong drive toward unambiguity by either getting novelties adopted or quickly pushing them into disuse. It is precisely this ease that a product like Beta Blocks, or a process like Beta Blocks, resists. It ensures that what might seem like an accepted matter of course will become difficult. Of course, bureaucracies present many difficulties, but some difficulties, as I'm sure you know, are easier than others. Typical bureaucratic difficulty is not generative, productive, or expansive. It is a mere inefficiency. Meaningful inefficiency, on the other hand, carries with it a responsibility to embrace the more difficult form of difficulty, one that inserts ambiguity, but always intentionally. Good urban governance of novel urban problems is never efficient. And as conversations about self-driving cars and data privacy and other such smart uncertainties become more and more a part of everyday life in cities throughout the world, it is imperative that government organizations embrace meaningful and not just mere inefficiencies. In fact, the more complex and novel a problem is, the more inefficiencies should be built into its resolution. The Beta Blocks project has demonstrated that there are big decisions to make about the future of urban infrastructure, and they have to be made with a recognition that cities comprise a plurality of stakeholders with different needs, responsibilities, and desires. As a result, people within government or other large organizations building out urban infrastructure have to start thinking like designers who are conditioned to tolerate, no, to invite ambiguity. The technological future cannot be merely efficient. As technology becomes more and more a part of everyday life in cities, it is only through the incorporation of play that we can assure that cities are more human than machine. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Eric, for the great speech and the content you have shared with us. Thank you so much. That was really informative, and it motivates people to be okay with ambiguity at the beginning, and then land safely on the clarity at the end of the journey of working with that. There's a lot of keywords you mentioned: urban technology, getting insight from the data that we are getting, and how we really help us down the road to make a very affirmative decisions at the end of the journey of that. And now I will leave the stage, the time for the attendee to share any questions they have for Mr. Eric. If you have any questions on that. So no questions. I have a question for Mr. Eric. I want to ask you about your project and what is the process that you are thinking about or working on now?
Yeah, well, I can tell you more. So Beta Blocks is a project that we started. We piloted in Boston, and it's going to be expanding to other cities first in the U.S. But again, quite simply, the process is about incorporating opportunities for play and play towards decision making among multiple stakeholders and constituents. So that has taken the form, as you saw. I don't know if I can get my slides back, but if I can't, but that has taken the form of us installing an inflatable structure that moves around the city, that kind of sparks conversation about urban technologies, right? It's taken a form of a board game that we created that we plop into both community meetings and public spaces, so people can again be inspired to think and reflect on what technologies do for them. And then finally, it's taken the form of temporarily installing technologies in cities so that people can actually touch them, feel them, see their data, play with them prior to the point of them being permanently installed. So this is the work. This is a large piece of what I'm doing at the Engagement Lab, among other projects. But this kind of represents, I think, the need to insert these meaningful inefficiencies into a process that is so quickly becoming hyper efficient, as for instance Google is modeling for us what a smart city looks like in Toronto through its Sidewalk Labs project, just being one kind of example that I think we need other models in order to resist the sort of model of a smart city that is again hyper efficient and mostly machine and not human.
Yes, and you mentioned about this project and what other, I would say, presentations that could of technology that you feel more excited to test and with the same thoughts that you started with in your project.
Sure. I mean, we're doing I'm doing a lot of work around using virtual reality and 360 video right now to not simply to represent what's possible. We saw some great examples earlier about VR or 360 video showing the perspective of someone other than you. So what it's like to be a child, you know, in a city. That's a wonderful example of the possibilities. But then what happens when we can use that technology that inserts people into a space to provide a kind of common space for interaction? So what it does, when you approach a group of people that don't necessarily understand an issue, and you can talk to them or even show them a video and say, here's the thing, it's very difficult to actually get over the abstraction of whatever that thing is, whether it's a part of a city or a possible process. But what's exciting to me about VR is that, much like a game, is that it inserts people into a process and it allows them to speak from their individual perspective. So after playing a game, for instance, someone will say, well, when I did that in the game, I did this, or I thought this. If you watch a video, you say, well, when that person did something, they did that.
Mm-hmm.
When you're immersed in a virtual reality experience, you do the same thing. You say, well, when I was there, I felt this. And that's a very different starting point for conversation. And for me, that's a part of what it means to use emerging technology as a way of creating opportunities for that kind of play, which starts from the kind of cognitive positioning of yourself into another perspective, and then allowing yourself to generate possible meanings from that perspective that you didn't have even moments ago.
Yes, and it speaks it speaks very much to the reality as well, and it is very real for people. That's why we can rely on and have a conversation about the real output out of this experiment as well.
Right.
Yes, thank you so much again for sharing your very insightful talk. Thank you for Mr. Eric. Sorry, I forgot my phone with my hand. And our next talk, it's very interesting to talk always about school and education. Some of you are still students, and some of you may be a very recent grad. And we always had this experience at school. Maybe we have our wish to maybe some days to connect to Ala ad-Din, and please, we want to have a very special journey in our education and our school. Sometimes we want to be more playful. We want to have this our space to speak more fun in math, science, maybe art, maybe biology, chemistry, physics. And thinking of that, our next speaker really thought of this and thought how we can really change the children or students' experience at school or maybe university. He will elaborate more on that. And our next speaker talk more about the experience of student and how it could be more innovative for experience overall. So he is an architect and a researcher, and he is the head of innovation at Nuvo. He will talk more about that, school and innovation and the space of that. Please help me welcome Mr. Ramzi Naja.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here, and thank you to the organizers for giving us this space for me to share our work. So I'm going to be talking about NewView, but first I'll start with a quick film that shows actually the space itself that I'm going to be talking about. So here we go. So this is our space in Cambridge, Massachusetts, in the Boston area. Hard to believe, maybe, but this is a school. And what we do there is we basically teach the creative process. So we don't believe at all in the traditional education system, and we're essentially on a mission to replace it with this. So what is the creative process? This process starts with identifying context and formulating a thesis. So first we kind of find the problem and start to think about how we want to engage with this problem. After that, we have the more analytical part, so we're talking about design research, brainstorming, and that leads us to identifying an idea. Now, once this idea is identified, things start to get a bit more interesting. First, students are going to be creating a prototype, actually making this idea, and the critique begins. So as coaches, or sometimes even as colleagues, we provide critique to the students, and that allows them to reinterpret the work they're doing. So they take this critique, synthesize it, and then refine and iterate on their projects. This process probably stretches out for most of the time students spend with us, and it ends with production. So essentially at a point we say, okay, now it's time to take the fittest idea so far and build the best possible prototype of it. And finally, they communicate this. So students create presentations sharing each project they've done. So what are we doing with this creative process and where are we taking it? There are 3 models through which we deploy it. The first is a semester exchange program. That would be how NewView started, how our founder started this. So students from schools in the Boston area, this is around 10 years ago, would come for a semester, sometimes 2 or more, and they would do this. They would just do projects for 2 to 3 weeks at a time within a studio for the entire semester. And then they go back to their school, everything's fine, they still get their subjects, they get an extra kick in their portfolio, whatever. Now, things started to get more interesting when the full-time school happened. And how this began to happen is students would come for a semester, and then they say, actually, we want to stay here. We want to stay for another semester, another year, on and on. Parents would begin to say, we've noticed much more comfort or motivation with their kids when they're here. So we grew to a cohort of almost 20 kids, or a group of almost 20 students who are doing this full-time. And the third, before I continue, is the network of labs inside other schools. So this is around 4 years old now. So we go to schools, develop partnerships with them, and set up a lab similar to the space you just saw inside. And that allows us to run a similar innovation school within these existing schools. So these are our 5 graduates from May 2019, just now. That's Louis, Teresa, Stefano, Satchel, and Jacob. So they all were doing just NewView as their full-time school for 2-3 years, up to probably 5-6 for the last guy. So they were there for a while. They're very geeky, they code very fast, et cetera, but they've all also gone on to pursue majors they're very interested in. Satchel's at MIT, Teresa at Carnegie Mellon, et cetera. So this is kind of NewView, but what is the NewView X program, which is our partnership program, how we work with other schools, and what are we really trying to do? So the mission simply is creating a culture of innovation across schools. We're trying to upend the existing educational system by slowly inserting this innovative form of teaching. And to do this, to us, the whole process is based on seeing. So we want students to see in a new way. We want them to analyze problems from multiple perspectives and then to use that to create new solutions. So over the past year, in Cambridge, we've done around 50 studios and had 600 students go through, including a large summer program we have that's open to everyone. And we've done 4 virtual exchanges, which we'll talk more about in a second. Through the network program, we've hit 700 students and 2,400 projects in the past year, and have successfully created an amazing innovation community across these schools through that time. Okay, so these numbers are from the end of the last academic year, so slightly old, but based on then, we were working with 14 partner schools across the world. 4 of them are public, which means there's no tuition paid, and they're in 6 different countries. They've increased since then. We also have a research and development arm, which actually makes this whole operation possible. And finally, there's the network itself, how we connect these schools to us in Cambridge and to other schools. So really quick, here are some of them. So All Saints Academy in in Florida, in the Lakeland area, is the first school we began working with, but now they start all the way west in Hawaii, through the West Coast, East Coast, Scotland, the Middle East, India, and most recently we're working on setting up programs in Perth, Australia, and in Singapore as well, and a few other places. So these are some of the labs. This is what it looks like. It varies a lot by school, so we bring kind of the approach and adapt to what exists, both spatially and in terms of curriculum. So top left is my favorite school in Woodstock, Vermont. Top right is the Kerem House in Turkey, so the school I work most closely with, or set of schools. These are community centers for Syrian refugee youth. Bottom right is All Saints in Florida, our first school. Bottom left is the very little kids in Wichita, Kansas, so this is probably our youngest program. We have kids as young as 7, 8 years old doing this. Okay, so how does this network work? Where is NewView situated within it? Obviously, we started from the center. So we develop studios in Cambridge, we kind of create a lot of content, a lot of resources, and we push them. But also each school has its own ecosystem, and we're interested in finding ways to kind of turn this diagram into that, connect the schools amongst each other, and have NewView kind of be a node within this much more complex network. And this creates a much swifter way to share information, to communicate, etc. So how are we developing this network? How are we creating the system? First thing is the NewView X Summit. So every year we have the leadership from all these schools come and gather at our space in Cambridge, talk about challenges they're facing, their vision, what they're trying to do, what the obstacles are along the way. We give a NewView X prize, which is for the whole network as well. We have a global network of experts. What this means is fellows we hire to run schools in different locations are actually also come from a certain expertise and contribute to the pool of resources. We have a studio advisory board that helps in studio development. We do a lot of global studios. So these are studios taking place in multiple schools where coaches teaching them, in Hawaii could be helping those in Scotland and etc. Global critique, so again, based on expertise, someone with an expertise in VR in Florida would be helping someone in Turkey with their project if it's in this specific area. Virtual and physical exchanges. So the virtual exchange program is a big part of what we do. We have kids in different locations work together in developing their projects through a multitude of ways. They use our online platform to share their information. They have regular video conferences, and this was a program started also with Kerem Foundation in Turkey, having these refugee kids work with students in the US. We don't really do yearly publications, but hopefully we will be soon. Okay, so research and development. So this is kind of the engine that makes all of this possible. It's in 4 parts: the studio management system, our online platform, assessment and evaluation, the NewView Hub, and studio development. So the studio management system, the online platform, as I still call it, is essentially where students post everything they do. So this is, think of kind of a social media platform meeting kind of a more traditional system like Blackboard or Moodle or one of those things. So it's very visual. There's a very complex editor for images. Basically, Photoshop is embedded, and students post their work on a daily basis, post updates. But the advantage to this system, apart from kind of the communication and everyone being able to see it within the school, is what happens without. So this is, for example, Jacob, who just graduated in May. This is his page. So if he gives someone a link with his name, they'll be able to access this. And all of the final projects, all of the final presentations from each project he's done is publicly available on this website. So if Jacob's applying for a job, for college, etc., they just need to give a link, and there's essentially a ready portfolio there. Also, if he logs in a few years later, he'll be able to find a string of code he wrote 5 years earlier that he might use in the resources of one of his studios. Similarly, the evaluation has 2 sides. On one hand, we have students do objective and subjective self-evaluation that goes with the evaluation they get from coaches. What this means is a student can compare how the coaches evaluate their work with how they felt they performed. It's usually divided, as you can see here, by skills. So like, I don't know, soft robotics would have robotics, coding, and CADing as the skills. But depending on the school we're working with, this could be numbers. So technically, an average could be developed, but we almost never do that. The NewView Hub, or I still call it this one the toolbox also, is basically this big database we have online that pools a lot of the resources we've developed over the years and that we continue to iterate on and improve. So this works in 2 layers for coaches or the people doing the teaching. They can go to the toolbox and find the resource they need to support the student through a project. They could pull a presentation template, modify it for the school they're in, the studio, and give it to students. But at the same time, students will be able to find resources they need. So if they've put together a series of electronics and need to code them, they'll find an Arduino tutorial or existing scripts that they could just pull and use immediately. With that goes the physical toolbox, which is a little bit weird, but really cool also. So we have 60 of these things in our space in Cambridge. So it started off as taking a rectangular prism and thinking, how many ways can you do this? How many materials can you do it with? Then the students got excited about it and they started making all these crazy joints. The cool thing about it is if you go to the online resource, you'll be able to find all of the details for any one of these, I don't know what to call them, toolbox boxes. So you can download production files if it's going to be 3D printed or laser cut, or you could find an explanation for how to assemble it, etc. So this has been very useful for students in the network. Finally, studio development. So we develop studios by brainstorming across the network, not just creating them all in Cambridge and saying that this is what you have to do now. And in parallel, we do our best to localize global themes. So what that means is if we're talking about climate change, obviously a pressing issue for our time, it's not the same conversation in Hawaii that it would be in the Middle East. So we try to talk with experts locally, with the school, to figure out kind of how we want to do this. I mentioned the virtual exchanges and the test before deploy, which is tricky because I don't know how much we really do this, but we definitely don't push a studio across multiple schools until we've tested it. So we do often use our space in Cambridge as a testing ground, such as if we're trying to run synthetic biology studios, we hire a synthetic biologist with expertise in this. We run 1 or 2 studios in Cambridge, and if it works, we begin to kind of deploy the studio to other schools with the training and resources it comes with. So finally, I'll go through a few projects and stories from the kids. So I'll just pick and choose, but this is tree dwellings. So this was done in Florida recently. You've probably heard they get a lot of hurricanes there. The past few years have been rather intense. So students are creating these houses that basically can be hung in trees as there's floods underneath. Farming for the future. This is again the Kansas kids. So they're using hydroponics and other technologies to look at the future of farming. This is probably the weirdest studio. I'm never sure what to say about it, but they're basically being inspired by animals and creating wearables. Not quite sure what those wearables do, but yeah. This studio actually is a very inspiring one. So this was our first virtual exchange. So we did a lot of testing with it, but the kids in Turkey worked with kids in Florida to develop prosthetics for individuals that were injured in the war in Syria. So for example, this little girl, Inas, has a broken comb in her foot, or her foot comb is broken. So the students created a boot for her that was, for the first time, printed in Florida, tested there. Then the final prototype was done in Turkey, and she still wears this now. This is Identity Vessels, another one of the virtual exchange studios. Morphing playgrounds. This is a fun one. So also, there's a playground under construction in Turkey, and kids in Woodstock, Vermont, Cambridge, and Turkey work together on designing different play structures that will be included in this play space. And the one in Cambridge was a musical intervention studio, so all of the games in the studio actually create music as they're being used. This is the playground, which is under construction now, almost done, by office architects in Beirut, and they've designed this structure that actually creates the space for all of these interventions to be placed within, but also to be modified, innovated over time, changed, etc. So all of the student projects will begin to fill this structure. This is in Scotland, so Kelvinside Academy, students from our school in Cambridge, so all of the graduates you saw in the beginning, plus another 10 students or so, traveled there and built this public space installation. So they spent ages making this little concrete thing so that it swayed just enough but didn't fall and people could walk between it and whatnot. And they went there and they had like 3 days to build the whole thing. And meanwhile, this thing was being built, which is the Innovation School, so the program we run at Kelvinside Academy. So this is one of kind of the most physically present programs we have at a partner school. So they're trying to, this is one of the oldest schools in the world, and they're trying to bring this sense of innovation into the core of the school. Meanwhile, I'll end with this. So on the opposite side, a project we did recently was for Vision 2030, where we developed 2 studios. So one of them was taught at Har'ar and the other one at Al-Kharj, south of Riyadh. And those studios basically aim to sort of help direct students to take on a bigger interest in renewable energy or energy and resources in general. So they were definitely interesting studios. Students looked at deforestation, oil spills, how to design and build projects for all of this. And actually the survey data from that was very interesting in that the studios were successful at helping students acquire the skills they need to potentially pursue an education in this area, and B, actually motivating them to care, like what is energy, or how can we take role in kind of the future economy of this country, etc. So this program was run by my colleagues Christina and Andrew, who spent several months developing these studios to particularly meet the needs of the context they're placed in. And they've been tested at both schools. And that's it. Thank you.
First, I would like to congratulate you for the great story you have today. We feel proud of that.
Thank you.
Do a very welcome interruption or disruption for the education system that we are having today, and really promote innovation and bring it for everyone to be welcome in that. So congratulations again for this. And now I'll open the floor for the audience. We already have a very ready one to raise a question.
Uh-oh.
Hello. Yeah, I want to thank you so much for, first of all, you're providing a resource that I would have loved to have when I was a student, but since I finished high school, so I wanted to ask, like, do you guys have any programs or activities for people that have finished school?
That's a tricky question. Not really, because we try to focus on what the US calls K through 12, so like younger kids, middle and high school. But actually we are specifically in Turkey or in this region testing 18 plus. So we'll be doing test workshops and studios and things like that. I'll be happy to keep you posted on those things. We also have our innovation camp, which happens once a year in Cambridge, which is open to the public, any age.
Great. Another question? Yes.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for the lovely talk, Ramzi. My name is Bayan. I have a question, but before I ask you this question, I was wondering if you've heard of the Maker movement, which also started in the US. I was actually the supervisor of the innovation program by SABIC. So I worked with the Maker movement in facilitating and delivering the program to high school kids. So it was a great experience in which I've observed how tinkering skills and design thinking, as you've explained, is really important to help kids transform any idea that they have into reality. So my question is your approach, the approach of your school, different compared to the Maker movement? And how can we know which programs? Because recently there's been a lot of initiatives that they recommend such a way of education, and I was wondering how can we decide between each one of them? Should each program target a certain age group, or for example, because the Maker movement is not just specifically for kids? So how are you different again?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's a great question, and thank you for the work you're doing also. I mean, we get asked this often, and in the US it's starting to become kind of competitive, but I think the niche we're in specifically is we focus on curriculum. So for us, this is education. It's not about learning a skill. So sometimes you have a student that comes in 4 years and doesn't learn how to 3D print, and we don't care at all, as long as they learn critical thinking. So we're using all of these skills and tools just as means to a larger end, which is developing the sense of critical thinking and giving the students the idea that they can actually identify a problem and with their own hands create a solution. I hope that kind of answers. Thank you.
Another question? We have it for Mr. Harry.
Thank you for the great talk, actually. And I had a question about, I guess it's a sort of curriculum question. Is this a curriculum, a design thinking curriculum? Is it an alternative to what might be more traditional subjects like history and language? You know, all the things that I probably learned at school, or is it alongside that? And how does that work?
Yeah, also a great question. I forgot to mention a little bit about this, but we've struggled with this a lot because there's always the question, if kids are doing this full-time, you know, what happens to history, what happens to math, etc. And at some point, we kind of took a position and said, the one subject that, apart from languages, that really can't be learned through this is math, because the basics are very integral. But then we tried giving math, and students hated it, so we stopped doing that. And actually, what we do with our full-time kids now is they take courses at the Harvard Extension School. So we advise and help them identify courses that will help them in the trajectory they're on. Some of them do a bit of homeschooling, so the US is more flexible with this. But it is definitely an open question that we still haven't fully answered. Thanks.
Great. And with that, we want to thank you very much for the great speak. It inspires a lot, as you can see, and have great questions. And thank you again, Ramzi.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So our next speech will be more focused about technology, but questioning that technology, how it is really being disrupting our connection together. Before, I used to study in the US, and I thought like technology was my thing to be really connected to my family. But when you really get connected, physically connected with your people, you start using your phone and you start to be disconnected again. And our next speaker has this concern about how technology can disconnect us and how we can rethink about it to rebound and reconnect with the outside world and with the people around us. So please help me welcome our next speaker. He's a director and interactive team and creative director at Movement Factory, Mr. Jean-François. Yes, Mr. Jeff, thank you so much. Please help me welcome him.
Hi, everyone. So, thank you for having me today. I'm very glad to be here to talk about the future of play and how Movement Factory sees it. Quickly, I want to introduce myself and the company. This is my memoji. My name is Jean-François Larouche. I know it's hard to pronounce. It's a French name because in Canada we have a French part of Canada. So I'm French Canadian, and people never know how to pronounce my name. So everybody call me JF. Jeff. So if you meet me, don't hesitate to use Jeff. It's easier. Yes, I lead the interactive department at Movement Factory, and I'm also creative director on interactive project. A little bit about me. I love sci-fi. I'm a big Star Wars fan since I'm very young. I love travel. I'm very glad to be here for the first time in your country. Thanks for having me again. And I really like to work at Movement Factory because I can use those three passions that I have. The first one being design. I'm a graphic designer, and I really like interactive design and UX. I love technology and sci-fi. And I really love humans, and I think that at Movement Factory, this is where I can meet those three passions. So what about Movement Factory? What is Movement Factory? It's a unique multimedia and entertainment studio. It's very hard to explain with words, so I think you should look at this little reel. We'll give you Thanks. So as you can see, we work with a lot of different industries, and we like to classify our project in two big categories. The first one being shows, so everything that is temporary, like ceremonies, shows, experiential marketing, stands, concerts. And we also do more and more destinations. So we take, let's say, a forest, and we create a magic forest, and for like Lumina, that is one of our product that we have at the moment, arena, public spaces, and stuff like that. Moment Factory now has more than 400 employees. 5 years ago, when I joined the company, we were less than 100. So it grew very fast. The home base is in Montreal, Canada, but we also have an office in Paris, Tokyo, New York, Los Angeles, and London. Now I have to read them, it's crazy. Interactivity. So as I mentioned, I lead the interactive team at Moment Factory, so I want to tell you a bit more about our vision. So as it was mentioned, technology today helps us connect in different ways. We can connect, with Facebook, with WhatsApp and stuff like that, but when you're in the public space, when you're with friends and your family, it can separate us. So we like to think that we break the interface to transform the technology, use the technology to try to transform it, to hijack it, and to bring people together in the physical world. This is very interesting because I'll talk later about VR and AR, and you'll see. So,
Moment Factory is ready. Ready to connect you with the environment, with each other, in new ways. Touch. Please prepare for your next activation. Body. This sound. This sound. Portables. Data visualization.
Yes, so this was the interactive reel, so focus on what we can offer and provide as the interactive team. Today at Moment Factory, we do a lot of client projects, but we spend a lot of time working on research and development. So 25% of our time is dedicated to testing new technology to make sure that we are always will understand what's coming. That our motto, the company motto is we do it in public. So as I said, we like to bring people, family together. But in the interactive team, we like to say we play in public. So we really focus on play and making people have fun through the game, through gaming. Two focus that we have right now is live action world. I don't know if you guys saw what Disney just did with Star Wars. They tried to create immersive, I talk about Star Wars, to bring like immersiveness and make people be part of the world and very immersive. So we're really into that, trying to reinvent a little bit the theater, reinvent destinations, and also augmented sports. People, I think it's very interesting, and we think it's interesting to add layers of magic on the top of augmented sports. So as the main topic today is play, I wanted to go through a couple of prototypes and projects that we did, just to give you an example of what we did and where we are at right now. So play creates social connectivity, as I just mentioned, taking games out in the real world. So this is a prototype where in teams of 2, you have one person that has to run to control the vessel and the other one that can shoot the enemy. So this was very fun. It was a prototype. It's not out yet, but we're trying to find new ways of using the phone, not being like this, but using the phone to interact as a remote to control the environment. This is, we tried to reinvent a little bit, not reinvent, because we didn't reinvent anything, but we tried to enhance the yoga and the meditation process. Oh, my video is too short, but I'll just make it again. So how to make it a little bit more fun to stay concentrated in front of the screen. Everybody knows Tetris, so we thought it would be fun to reinvent Tetris, and this is the first version, but we are further than that now. The camera moves everywhere, but you have to move your body to make sure that you don't get hit by a wall. So this is another prototype we did lately. This is a project we did 1 year ago. A lot of snow, because Montreal and Canada has a couple of months with snow, but this was a night walk in a castle where at the end kids had to throw balls on, I'll make it again, throw balls on a big wall to make the finally appear. So it was very fun, and at first we wanted to use a real snowball, but it was too rainy that week, so we had to use plastic balls. This is another prototype we did. We wanted to also use the phone into a different way, having the phone on your wrist, and it was kind of a catch the game where people had to run into the forest to make sure that they catch the color of attached to the trees. It was very fun. It was for a Halloween party. Also, we worked with in Japan for the Olympic that are coming soon, on a couple of stunts with Panasonic, where we were able to use new technology to track high speed, to use high speed tracking and projection mapping to make sure that we could like reinvent a little bit the way we play soccer and baseball and ping pong. For those of you that have seen this, this is the first version of Grid, the team pong game that you can experience in the Great Hall right now. I invite you to do so. So this was the first version. This is Karmic Radiation, another game that was developed for a workshop. Very fun also. It's also available in the Great Hall. This is very interesting because for a couple of years now we were trying to do something in the pre-show of our projection mapping. This is not in Paris, in France, sorry. And it's we have a big show on a cathedral there, but we wanted people to engage before, instead of being on Facebook on their phone, we wanted them to be already part of the story and part of the event. So we created that website. It's a simple website. Actually, the process of doing this was a little bit chaotic because making sure that you have all the steps for people to be able to interact and understand what you have to do before the show. But it was very interesting because at least you had it was kind of a quiz. So you answered a question and your question would appear on the cathedral and then it would be very interactive. Also, we have a new skate park next Moments Factory's office in Montreal, and we thought it would be good to do a workshop with the kids that play there. So we decided to put projector on the floor and do tracking, so the skater would... sorry, you saw it. So people would be able to be tracked. This is at the same event where we also tried a couple of games where you had water and you have rock coming out and people had to run to find a rock. And this one is in it's U Arena. It's a big arena in Paris, and we also tried a couple of installations to make it very impressive and large. So with your phone, you were able to throw not snowball, but fireball on the ground, and we did a couple of experimentation also to connect the crowd. So what's next? This is very interesting because I show you all this, but we're working on new prototypes and new stuff. First of all, new technology will help create new kind of games in the physical world. First of all, what is very exciting is the AI tracking. Soon, with simple web camera, RGB camera, you'll be able to track, but also know where are the head and the shoulder and the arms of everyone in a room. So this is very exciting because we'll be able to create a magic trick. Let's say you can raise your hand, it creates a magic ball and stuff like that. So this is something that we're very exploring right now. I'll show you, this is a couple of examples of tracking that we did lately. I thought about the new projector that are high speed and also the new way we can track at high speed also. So it creates, for a ping pong game to be able to track the ball at that speed. I think it's very promising for the future and for play, because play is very quick. So it will be interesting to play with those technology, and the projector are getting more sharp. Also, the contrast are better, so the immersiveness will increase, of course. We are also passionate about connected objects and tangible interfaces. So we are creating our own motherboard at Moment Factory. We created that magic trail in the forest. We created those big sticks that light up depending on what you do. This magic stick also interact with the environment. This was a prototype. And we're also creating, like, as I mentioned, a small motherboard that will be able to be incorporated, let's say, in a hat, and we'll be able to create magic tricks and interaction with this in the future. So very promising. Also, as I mentioned, AR and VR at the beginning of the presentation, AR and VR will be the fourth major shift in technology. We had the computers, internet that changed everything. Mobile, now we all have a mobile in our pocket, but what's coming next will be those glasses that will maybe help us be less on our phone, but be more connected with each other. So for us, it's really related to our mission, and we really like it. And it's sad that we don't like VR. VR and AR are related, but are kind of two separated things. VR, you're more isolated. So we really want to focus on AR because, as I mentioned, you can see your friend, you can see your family, you can share a moment, and it's very unique in that way. Also, crowd participation is something that we are trying to explore, because it's good to have people playing a game in the middle of a public space, but how do you make sure people around can participate also? So this is the next generation of the games, the Pong game that you saw in the Great Hall that I just presented, where as being a viewer around with AR, now it's with your phone, but soon it will be with glasses, you are able to make choices that influence the game that is on the floor, as you can see here. So people have chosen the dinosaur, so the dinosaur will influence the game while people are playing with it. So now, as we all have phones in our pocket, we're trying to find new ways of making the crowd interact, as I mentioned, with the participants. And of course, I just want to end by telling you to go and try on the Great Hall the 4 games that are here that we all package and put together to make sure that it shows well what play is in public spaces. Here you go, the big version of in the Great Hall. So don't hesitate to contact me online. I'm on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and momentfactory.com if you want more information about Moment Factory. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So I should admit that this speech brought so much joy to the room and
Good.
the whole.
I didn't see anything actually. I was blind.
I can tell you
Okay,
that.
good.
Yes. So that was really great, and it's opened our eyes to what is next upcoming in the game world, and with the technology, of course. So I have a lot of questions, but I leave the opportunity for the attendee if they have any questions to address for our speaker.
One here.
Where? Yes.
Okay. I'm asking about the previous video. You showed us that you use projector. What about using hologram technology?
Hologram?
Yeah.
Actually, we would love to use hologram. The thing is, hologram right now are either a technology that, you know, they did with Michael Jackson, and you know, it's kind of a. It's hard to explain like that, but it's projection on a kind of a transparent. It's not that. You know, if you're at the right angle, it works. But as soon as you move around, you see the trick. So for our project, when we want people to move around, it doesn't work. And now they are working on new hologram with that project on smoke and stuff like that. Hope it will work soon because we could create amazing stuff with that. That's a good question.
Another question, if there is any in the audience.
You have no question. All right.
Okay, so let me ask you a question, Jeff. What are the fields that you see it's very promising now to embed this kind of technology and work you are doing now?
The fields, I would say, as we talked about play, I would say all those public spaces, you know, those new development in cities where they have to rethink the way cities, public spaces are built. I think it's those technologies that are affordable now could be very embedded in new public space area and stuff like that.
Okay.
And also we work with medical child hospitals because you know when you're sick and you're a child and you're in the waiting room, we try to work with them to reshape a little bit the playroom.
So it changed the whole experience of a
being
child,
sick.
Being
you
sick
forget that you're sick for a while.
Yes, that changed the energy of the kid
itself.
itself.
Yeah, totally. They forget that. Yeah.
Yes. And what other projects or secrets maybe you want to share with us that you're working on?
On our website, you'll see that we have those Lumina project. It's a night walk in the forest. We're opening new night walk around the world in Japan, in Canada, and in Europe. But also we're working on Aura, which is one of our, I don't know if you remember the projection on the cathedral and the church.
Yes.
We're doing more of those kind of projection and of that kind of monument in Europe, so it's coming soon.
What's really also stands out for me, the instant interaction that people could jump into a game and be part of it out of and people unexpectedly have this kind of involvement from other people.
The action reaction is very important.
Yes, in the game. Do you have another, for example, I saw in the website, I navigated your website and I told you before the speech about the Singapore airport project. So you do other also kind of focus in the Moment Factory. Can you tell us also more about that?
Yeah. Actually, what I discussed about was more about interactivity, but we do a lot of projection mapping, and like at the airport, we do a lot of high-end visuals that can be displayed on big screens or in airport, for instance. We did something very interesting at Los Angeles Airport a couple of years ago. So you can check this out. It's called the LAX project. It's very interesting also what we... so you can see. But we do, we touch a little bit different...
Yes. You have your own magic touch in whatever you get into.
That's what we like to say.
Yes. So, we have here a question. Okay, I'll translate for you. Yes.
أيوة. فقط أحببت أن أذكر أني لعبت أنا وبنتي بالألعاب الموجودة هناك وكنا مستمتعين جدا جدا جدا، وأدعو وأتوقع أن الكل اللي حضر هنا اليوم أكيد أنه حضر في الألعاب ولعبها، كانت جدا رائعة. الجميل في هذه الألعاب أنها ألغت موضوع التصنيف العمري، فالكبير والصغير كلهم كانوا يلعبوا، ما كانوا يحسوا بنوع هكذا أنظر يعني أنا للموضوع. فيعني بهرت الحقيقة، وجدا شكرا. ممتاز انكم احضرتوا الرجل الذي وراء هذه اللعبه، لاني كنت جدا مبهوره، وكنت اتمنى انها تكون موجوده في المدارس او في الجامعات او في الاماكن العامه اللي احنا او في دواماتنا يعني. فشكرا شكرا لمستر جان، شكرا لكم.
شكرا لك.
I wish I could understand that. Damn.
So she was talking, she had experience in the Great Hall with the game you have it, and she was so happy about the experience. And she said that she didn't feel the age differences with everyone. She felt so welcome, and she wanted to thank you especially and know the man behind that and all that.
But it's a big team. It's a big thing behind that. It's not only me. It's
sure, it is the Moment Factory team that you are part of it. And I also want to thank you for the great speech. And please help me also thank him again for the great speech.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Now I'll switch to Arabic, so you can take off your headsets. شاكرة جدا لجميع الحضور للقاء اليوم الجميل. استمتعت جدا في منصة تنوين مع جميع المتحدثين. وسع آفاقنا لأفكار مختلفة عن الجيم والبلاينج and architecture from architecture and design perspective. قبل ما أودع الجميع الحاضرين وأشكرهم كمان على الحضور، حأدعوكم ل networking opportunity في واحة المعرفة عشان يكون في تواصل أكثر بين الحضور لمناقشة هذه الأفكار، أو ممكن تكون في مواضيع أخرى خاصة بثيم اليوم أو اللقاءات السابقة. أشكركم، وأحب أذكركم أنه غدا هو آخر لقاء في منصة تنوين. حيكون موعدنا بإذن الله مع متحدثين آخرين. ألقاكم غدا وأنتظركم إن شاء الله بإذن الله. شكرا.